Hi, and welcome everyone to wholesoulschool and Foundation's Fireside Chats for July 2020. My name is Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, intuitive, and co-founder of wholesoulschool and Foundation. I'm here with my co-host and co-founder, Lacy Frazer, who worked as a clinical psychologist for many years and who is a practicing life coach and consciousness educator today. I want to welcome everyone to our inspiring Fireside Chats podcast this month, and I just want to take a brief moment to remind our listeners that our mission here at wholesoulschool and Foundation is to educate, enrich, integrate, and liberate the heart and soul in people worldwide. We offer engaging podcasts and weekly inspirational messages on social media platforms, and we aim to support, educate, and empower people whose lives have been impacted by incarceration and reentry. And now I want to welcome Lacy to the conversation today.
Hi, Marie.
Hey, welcome. It's so good to be back always talking about these larger themes of self-awareness and personal growth and raising our consciousness to live more authentic and liberated lives.
Absolutely.
And, we talked about this, and I'm really excited about this topic that we want to spotlight this month, which is from confinement to freedom. And there's many threads to lots of things in between that, those are big dualities, right? Those are, from confinement and all the things that go with that to truly living our authentic and liberated self and being free. And to launch us in this conversation, Lacy, I wanted to spotlight one poem from Flower Diamond, who writes many poems for us every month that we post on social media. And every single one is an offering for us to see a little differently, to look into our lives a little differently, to be a little bit self-reflective, right? Because that's what art does. That's what inspired writing does. And Flower's poem, one of her poems, said this: "Power of choice, this fundamental knowing that at any moment you can be free." Right? And I think she captures just so much as she paints those words on the page, because that's the bridge.
Yeah.
The power of choice is the bridge.
Between incarceration and freedom.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think that so many people don't feel free in their lives. They feel limited. They feel stuck. They feel inhibited from moving forward in their lives. And many, many people don't realize that the power or the journey to freedom, really the vehicle for that is choice. That we make thousands of decisions every day, that we make choices every day in our life. And that if we actually really paid attention to these choices, we could create the life that we want to create. We could feel the freedom that we want to feel to create the life that we want to create. And it's just really synchronistic that this topic is coming up right now, because I am reading a book by Debbie Ford, who's a best-selling author and sort of spiritual guru. She's no longer on the planet in physical form, but she's written many books, and she wrote a book called The Right Questions. And I am in the process of teaching some of this book to a class this week. And the whole idea is that there is an incredible power in choice, and that we, in order to feel more free, in order to move past our limitations, we have to understand that we are making choices constantly throughout our days, throughout our weeks, months, our lives. And I loved how she talks about this, and she writes 10 very powerful questions that help us decide in which direction are we going to move. And I don't want to give too much away yet, but I just want to kind of lay the foundation. And I thought, if you're open to it, I'd love to share kind of the premise of this, because it really speaks to Flower's poem. It speaks to the notion of how can we create our own road to freedom.
Freedom is a concept that many people would say they want, right? We
Absolutely.
want creative freedom, financial freedom, health freedom, all kinds of freedoms we really desire, to be anything, to go anywhere, to be able to afford whatever it is that we want. And yet so many people don't know the steps, don't even know the first step necessarily.
Well, they don't even know that not only do they not know the first step, but they don't know that the power actually lies within them to make different choices along the way towards that freedom that they so desperately seek. Right? So,
well, freedom, to build on that, I'm just saying freedom to a lot of people is a concept that's out on the horizon line somewhere, far away from where they're presently living.
Yes.
So either they're not thinking about it because they're just living their patterns and they don't know that there is, they're not even thinking about freedom because it's definitely not in their experience. Or some people might be aware of that level of freedom in their life, but it feels so far away, and they can keep walking towards the horizon line and it just seems to get even farther away, right? And there are these steps in our lives that we learn over time, these tools, these skills. And Debbie Ford is talking about these questions we can ask ourselves that can be guides for us in that journey to narrow the gap between the freedom we seek and the life we're presently living.
Yes. And she actually describes what you just sort of talked about, I would call the default map. Right? So we have these very repetitive, automatic programming that does not, it doesn't nourish our inner power and wisdom and intuition. These are just default patterns of thinking, basically made up of our past and everything in our past, and leads us in a direction actually opposite of the way we want to go. So, you and I talk a lot about these sort of ingrained patterns of thinking that we struggle with breaking, or I should say, I'll speak for myself, that I struggle breaking away from. And what I've learned is that it's not just about breaking away from old patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving, but it's establishing and creating new ones. In addition to that. And that's what's really important. So she talks about kind of our past and these repetitive patterns as being the default map, right? We could follow the default map, or we can create a vision map. We can create a map of what we really want to feel, where we really want to go, who we really want to be. And that map is based on our heart's desires. And not many people are really taught even how to identify their heart's desires.
Exactly.
Right. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, when you were talking, we've been through a house renovation and repair project in 2020. And one of the things that we went through was dealing with electrical work. And so all the wiring is in the wall for whatever lighting or electrical gadgets or switches or whatever it is that you want. It's there. That's the default pattern. But we, during this project, got to choose. Do we want the same old light we've had, right? Do you review what's in your, right, what's there? And we have that circuitry for ourselves, that it's already wired the way that it is. I don't know if we needed to just back up and just to make sure we're talking about the default patterning that's there and it's inside everybody. And it comes from our conditioning and our early childhood experiences and the way people mirrored how we behave back to us, whether that was our teachers, our parents. All that is inside us, and we go through many, many experiences as children as we're growing up, where we tend to have, repeat experiences, and that forms that default patterning and how we're going to show up in the world and how we're going to respond to the world. And I just wanted to say, and as I make that analogy towards our home improvement project, that the wiring is always there. So the wiring for those old patterns, we've already well established that. It's already perfectly there. If we want an upgrade, or we want to switch out a switch or switch out a light or choose something different, we have to consciously do that because that's not how the house was pre-wired.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Yes. No, totally. And kind of how I like to think about it is, if your life is a series of forks in the road. Let's just say in a given 18-hour period of your day, you have a series of decisions that you make, on the hour, every hour, right? Mm-hmm. And your choices are going to determine the next fork in the road in a way. Right. And your choices are going to determine, am I going to go right, or am I going to go towards my vision, my future, my heart's desire, or am I going to go left and do what I've always done, right? So one of the ways she talks about this is, so you've got your default map and you've got your vision map. And the vision map is sort of a deliberate plan for your future, as we talked about, based on your heart's desire. And so I'm also trained as a coach, and a lot of coaches will talk about this notion of, do you want to look through the windshield of your life, or do you want to spend time looking in the rearview mirror of your life? And it's kind of the same thing. Do you want to look at the things that are in your past that are the default patterns that will keep you limited and stuck? Or do you want to make decisions and choices that will help you move forward, that keep you looking through the windshield, that keep you moving towards your heart's desire? And that's sort of the foundation of this book, and the 10 questions she's got in the book help you in all of those forks decide. If you ask one of these questions to yourself, it will help you make a good decision.
Yeah.
So I just want to say, before we kind of talk about the questions, she says basically that every choice we make leads us in one of two directions, right? We're either headed towards the future that inspires us, or we're headed towards the past that limits us, right? So choices made from fear keep us tied to the past. Those are those default ways of thinking. Our need for safety, security, and predictability prevents us from stepping outside our comfort zone of what's familiar, even when it no longer fulfills us. This is the autopilot. This is because we don't want to step out of that comfort zone to make a new choice. We'll just choose the old because it's comfortable, even though it's really not fulfilling, satisfying, meaningful, or purposeful.
Right.
Right?
Right. And
our fear of expanding and taking risk leaves us feeling that our dreams are unrealistic and out of reach. Okay, so those are choices that are made from fear and that keep us tied to the past, or looking in the rearview mirror, or following the default map. Mm-hmm. And then if when we're headed toward a future that inspires us towards our deepest desires, we feel the support of the universe, and we are inspired by our own lives, right? Our excitement wakes us up in the morning and gives us energy and motivation to forge ahead. When our actions come straight out of our vision for our lives, we radiate joy and passion. We feel empowered and confident. So that's the map, that's the vision map, right? We are making choices out of the place of what inspires us and motivates us and our heart's desire. So we're moving really towards a vision, or we're kind of staying back and hanging out in the past.
Oh, playing small.
Playing small, exactly.
Living large in a way, or playing small.
Yes. Or, keeping it with the theme of our talk today, it's really about freedom. Do we want to move to a place of feeling free within ourselves and in our life? Or do we want to, are we too nervous or scared or fearful to leave the default patterns and our comfort zone? And we're faced with that choice constantly. So I don't know if you want to kind of, before I move into any of the questions, I just am feeling the energy of those choices and those kind of maps, if you will. And many people, I think, who are sleepwalking on the planet right now, I don't know if that's really a term, but it's kind of like they're on autopilot. They don't know that they have choice in every moment. They don't know how to take those steps towards freedom. So I really would love to review some of these questions, which it will illustrate what we're trying to say here.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay. So she talks about basically that the answer to any of these questions will immediately clarify your thinking and support you in making the choices that are in your highest good, and have you walking towards your vision, walking towards your heart's desire. So I'll just take the first question, and let's come up with a scenario. Let's say that I'll just say that I have a desire to lose 20 pounds. Okay. And I'm going to put that on my vision map that I have a desire to lose 20 pounds. So the first question is, will this choice propel me toward an inspiring future, or will it keep me stuck in the past? So how do we relate that to wanting to lose 20 pounds? Well, let's say I go to reach for that, that snack or that dessert that my daughter's made or something like that. And I know that it's not the best thing for me. And if I have a question like this that I could ask myself or call up really quick in that moment, and I could say, is this taking me towards my goal, essentially?
Or further away.
Or further away from my goal. Exactly. So, and many of the questions are kind of this ilk. The second one is, will this choice bring me long-term fulfillment, or will it bring me short-term gratification? And that's a big question for a lot of people. So the dessert or the glass of wine or I'm sure we can think of many examples where we're faced with a decision that we know won't be good for us, but it would provide a short-term gratification versus long-term fulfillment.
Right.
So I don't know if you want to try to come up with an example that we can work from here.
Well, I don't know about that, but what I was feeling when you were talking was just that short-term fulfillment and that long-term gain. To me, it continues to be sort of that experience of yourself wherever you are in your life. If you already know you're not living meaningfully or in that full and rich and free way, and there's this experience of there's that freedom you want out there on the horizon line, there's this experience of that short-term gain is just, I felt a smallness. To me, I can just insert smallness and contraction and living this small life and just limited with what we know. And you know how you're going to feel if you have that cookie. Right. In 20 minutes or an hour is going to go by or whatever, and you're not going to feel any more fulfilled than you did an hour ago. But making that choice for that long-term goal of like that long-term horizon line of like, I want to feel fit and free, and maybe I see myself taking a vacation. Like I want to be able to, if we follow your examples, right, and we talk about how we feel in our physical bodies, and we want to go we're taking a trip. We're going to go on a holiday, right? We want to be able to wear that suit. Is eating that cookie right now helping me to feel fit and free and fully enjoying my holiday in the way that I want to feel inside myself? So I can have that cookie, right? And it would, I'd be happy for about 15 minutes because I'll be satiated in a different short-term way. But is it really helping me in the longer term of what I really do want? And usually longer term goals, right, that are more meaningful, take steps in the fog. Take a commitment to make those decisions where you don't get the immediate gratification now. It comes later. But if you don't have that vision in your head of what you're wanting and stepping towards that visual map of what you want, you're creating what you already have.
Well, you gave such a great example, because what you talked about was a full vision there. It wasn't just I want to lose 20 pounds. What I felt you expanding on the vision was, I want to take a trip. I want to wear a nice bathing suit. I want to feel good about myself. I want to wake up every morning feeling confident and fit and strong and healthy. Right? And if this is the vision that I'm conjuring, that I'm creating in my mind, then every decision that I make along the way in my life is I have to evaluate. Is this going to take me towards that vision and towards that feeling, or is it going to take me away from that feeling?
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Well said. The third question is, and I really like this one, and you may be able to come up with a good example. Am I standing in my power in this situation, or am I trying to please another? Now, I can think of, as a parent, I can think of a lot of examples there for me that I've had to ask myself, even as a spouse, am I standing in what I truly want here? And or am I trying to please someone else with the answer to this?
It is powerful, right? The phrase that comes to mind when you ask that question, say it again.
Yeah. Am I standing in my power in this situation, or am I trying to please another?
I have a friend that uses the term, sometimes I feel like I'm pushing the river. And that feeling of when you're working that hard to influence someone else, your only power point is inside yourself, right? There is no pushing the river with other people. There's no amount of pushing that you can really do to effectively make that other person want what you want for them. Our only point of power is inside ourselves. And so, but in the world we live in today, where many people, it's part of the conditioning here, we don't always feel empowered. So sometimes we do, in some ways, make decisions that push other people around so we can feel like we have a little bit of power. Right? That's, I think, all too often.
Or, the opposite, and I actually see this a lot in my work, is I've met a lot of people who sacrifice their power to please others.
Right. And both of those are examples when we really don't feel like we're in our true power.
Right.
Because we either need to push people around to get it, or we don't stand up for ourselves and we agree to things or whatever it is because we play small. Because we don't want to own the true power that we have choice.
Right.
Ultimately taking us down back to that theme of we have the power of choice. But, I just like to keep saying as we review these that we're in a world culture, a global culture, a culture in the U.S., right, where we see time and time again where many people feel disempowered in some way, or they're acting out, not being in their true power in some way. And if we boil that down to its core root, it often is because we don't realize we have the power of choice of what we think, about what we say, how we position ourselves, the things we engage in, how many times we say yes to an invitation when we really meant no. There's just so many, but we have these choices. We have these choices. And the more we say yes when we meant no, the more we feel small and contracted and we can't really have the life that we want. And then we're continue that pattern of being in a reactive state and living our default patterns, which are consistent with the larger culture of somehow an imbalance of power inside ourselves, when the true balance of power is knowing we have choice in every moment.
Yes. And that's real freedom.
It is
right?
freedom. Right?
It is freedom.
And it isn't out there on the horizon line, then, is it? It's not something 2 miles away or 50 miles away where we can see it out at sea. It's actually right inside us of how we're choosing to perceive anything that we're involved in, engaged in, thinking about, feeling about. It is a power of choice. I think you've said it before in some podcasts, Lacy. How many thoughts do we think a day? Isn't it like something like 60,000 thoughts a day? Mm-hmm. Right?
I don't know how you measure a thought, but that's what's in the research.
Right? And whatever the research says, that's still quite a lot of thoughts.
Right?
We know we're thinking thoughts when we wake up and we come to conscious after a night of sleep.
Right.
And then when our head hits the pillow the very next night. A lot of thinking and feeling and interactions have happened between those 2 points in time.
Yes.
And so there's so many different ways that we show up to meet everything that happens in our life. And every single one of those intersections is a choice point. And we can either feel like we're empowered to make the choices that we truly want to make for ourselves, or we're even a victim of the choices, or that we don't have any choices and we have to do X. I have to go to this party because my boss would be, disappointed, or people would notice if I wasn't there, and that would bring more questions. So I don't want to go, but I have to go.
Obligation.
I'm obligated, right? And obligation is an energy of confinement.
Right.
Let's all just think about that,
yes.
right? Obligation, yes. And I have to do this. It's a little different than, oh my gosh, my office is having this amazing party and everybody's going to be there and it's going to be so fun. That's a whole different approach and engagement with this very same invitation that somebody else might interpret that as, I have to go, I don't want to go, it's after hours, I'm not even getting paid for that. Then why don't you say no? Oh, I couldn't say no, right? There's a lot of people feel boxed in their lives because they don't understand that the choice comes inside them. And when we're uncomfortable with a choice, there's a choice to look at that discomfort.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Really, if you think about it, there's about 60,000 choice points in our day.
Exactly.
Right? And intersections.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very powerful. So another question is, am I looking for what's right here, or am I looking for what's wrong? So, I teach a lot about positive psychology, positive thinking, positive energy. It goes along, it's in the same camp as coaching, looking through the windshield, asking people these powerful questions to help them find the power within themselves to make different choices, to create a new vision, to make choices that will result in baby steps towards a better life or a vision for a better life. Mm-hmm. And I do think that, you and I have had podcasts, we've talked about from victim to creator, mm-hmm. right? Looking at life through the lens of a victim or looking through the life through the lens of a creator. We've also talked about looking at life as a challenge, a journey, and an adventure,
right?
And here we are now talking about, do we want to live following our default map, mm-hmm. or do we want to live following our vision map? And I can tell you, I have good experience, deep mm-hmm. experience in both of these maps, and sometimes they're like overlaid with each other. So within the same 10 minutes, I could have a default thought or thought pattern, and at the same time choose something new, after I've thought about it.
And again, if we bring in this theme of the power of choice with what you just said, Lacy, we're really also talking about the power of awareness. Because
100%.
Many people could have the old thought and the old pattern and also the new thought that's that potential to get you more where you want to go. But you can't make a conscious choice or use the power of choice if you don't have the tool of awareness and you're not willing to see what's the old choice presenting itself. You'd have to have that moment of pause where you're willing to just see what's presenting itself in your life instead of just reacting
right.
like the victim who's reacting out of their patterns.
Right.
You could actually, for a little while, witness through awareness what your pattern is. Because if you do that just a few times, you'll start to catch it when it's happening, and you'll be able to see, but what do I really want? Because I know if I do what I always do, it's going to create the same outcome that it always does. It doesn't matter who it's with. It's the same pattern. And that's something else to bring this into this conversation. You might say, oh, that only happens with my cousin. Oh, but wait, it does happen with my coworker, right? The other day it happened with my son or my daughter. And when you start to realize that there's a common denominator in the patterning that keeps showing up and creating your life experiences, you are the default map.
Yes.
Right? You're the one who keeps, when you're not aware, you're just running the pattern.
It's on autopilot.
It's on autopilot.
Right.
But if you can become aware long enough to catch it as it's happening, witness it as it's happening, there's this other, wiser, amazing essence of you that can say, what do I want? If I don't want to make the choice that's going to put me right back in that old pattern, and then you have to remember your vision map and think about, where am I trying to go?
Exactly.
And that's when the power of choice comes in. So it's like the power of your awareness as a tool, definitely has to be an ally to bring about the power of choice mm-hmm. that we have. That's that critical bridge between the default patterning and the default map that you always have, or the new one and the vision map that you're actually trying to create. And I get very practical energetically, when people are running their old patterns, it's like Groundhog's Day, like that movie, where you're living the same life every day. And so when you use words, we used words like obligated, right? Or I'm responsible, or I have to do that. It isn't long before you're not feeling what you described, the vision map, which is inspired. Because the vision map is that that what you're trying to create.
Possibility.
It's possibility.
It's the language of possibility versus the language of limitation.
Right? And you already know the language of limitation.
Right.
Because many of us have grown up with that. We know what it feels like to feel limited. I mean, I have very rarely met people who went from total inspiration, curiosity, awareness, like every day's exciting and it's an adventure, and they decide that limitation feels so much better, right?
Right.
Most people are in the conditioning of limitation because it's kind of part of being born on this earth planet. That's some of the messaging that we get. And we have to either unlearn that or learn a new way so that we can set a new course.
Yes.
And so, but you know, when people are facing and feeling limitation every day, you know, they just get up and they go to their job because they've always had this job, or they just have to have a job, but they're not even inspired by their job. They're just doing time. They're just in that incarcerated, confined consciousness.
Sleepwalking state.
That just, you know, they just do it out of, you know, that autopilot that you're saying.
Right.
But it's an entirely different feeling when you learn how to ask yourself these questions and when you learn how to partner with that tool of awareness. And it is liberating, and you think differently, and you put your shoes on differently, and you put your coat on, and you just drive your car differently. You're inside yourself differently because you're the driver. You're the one that's creating it. You're choosing in everything that you do throughout your day how you're about to experience that day. And it's so exciting. And so, but these tools that Debbie Ford is bringing, I mean, it has helped to have these people that bring this language to us to help us even be aware. You know, you and I are aware, and we choose a lot of what we do, but I know there are still default patterns. I mean, do you brush your teeth the way you've always brushed your teeth, or do you choose to brush your teeth differently?
Right.
Some things you just don't think about because there are still some conditioned patterns inside us.
Yeah, you know, as you're talking, I'm thinking a lot about the men that I worked with in prison and just my career as a psychologist. For a good, if I worked 21 years, a good probably 12 of those years, I was on the kind of default program of a psychologist, you know, and I was working with patients out of my textbook and my graduate training and what I knew about human behavior. And then I went through a huge shift within myself, and I just gradually found myself so uninspired by analyzing or therapizing that past default map for people, you know? And what I loved helping people create, find, question, inquire a new way, a forward-thinking way. And so I love...
And that was a new way for you.
And that was a new way for me.
You were inspired by your own new way.
Correct. Absolutely. So I had made my own shift, took the steering wheel back in my car of life and was as the driver. And now I was helping other people do the same. And to this day, in doing the work that I'm doing now, I am doing the same thing. And it's very powerful. And, you know, not to say that I don't fall back into old habits of thought and habits of behavior, because it does happen. But I would say the pendulum has absolutely swung to knowing that I know the truth of all we are speaking of. I've reaped the benefits of being a visionary, creating a vision, waking up with a good attitude, and stepping through my day, anticipating what's around every corner and loving every minute of it. And then I've had days where I've not wanted to get out of bed, and I've stubbed my toe, and I've forgotten to do something or left the garage door open, or, just whatever it is. In the default pattern, because I wasn't aware, and I had to get back in the driver's seat. So it's almost like I was in the driver's seat, and there'll be days or hours where we slip over into the passenger side of life's car, right? And when we're not paying attention. But when we stay aware, when we pay attention, when we use tools like this, we understand that we have choice, that everything is a choice. Life becomes so much more exciting and fulfilling. And we're working towards something. We're moving towards something. We're not running away from something or hiding behind something or hiding in the default patterns.
Well, our whole demeanor changes because everything in our energy is saying yes to life and yes to ourselves and yes to freedom and yes to that feeling of being a creator versus somebody who is in the passenger seat and who life is happening to.
Exactly. You know, it's just fascinating. Then the very next question that I wanted to read was, you can ask yourself, will this choice add to my life force or will it rob me of my energy? Which is really what you're speaking of.
Right. Exactly. And we know that, you know, once you become more conscious in it, anybody listening to this, you don't have to take our word for it. You just have to try it on and do a little experiment and allow yourself to be a witness observer to your own default patternings.
Right.
What do you do every day so automatically that sometimes you don't even remember if you did that because you've already got the visual motor rehearsal through all the conditioning of your life and your daily habits that you barely even have to be a little bit above breathing to just live your day. Right? That's another expression of the smallness. And it's not that smallness is bad. That default patterning is that autopiloting. It's not a negative thing, but it's not the same energy and it's not the same experience of people who are consciously choosing and creating their day in every moment, and that they know that everything that's happening to them, there's a choice. Right? There's just, and it's not just one choice. It's not, I mean, I know in her example, do I take the right turn? Do I take the left turn? To me, once you start playing in the realm of possibilities and you truly are free, there's not just one possibility for you. There are hundreds or thousands of ways that things could play out. But you do take the next step that you can take towards freedom and more choices open to you. And if you're closed off from that and you say, well, that just doesn't happen for me, or that might happen for somebody else, but it can't happen for me. That's a choice in your belief system. I mean, choice is at the core of so much of how and what we live every single day. And even if you don't think you're making a conscious choice to live kind of the default map that she describes, even that is a choice. To believe that you don't have choice, or to allow that into your conscious awareness, say, well, or to say I have choice about all these other things, but not about this one other thing, right? It really, everything in our lives is at some level a choice of what we believe, what we feel, what we say, who we interact with, the jobs we take, the family members we indulge, the yeses we say when we mean no, the no's we say when we mean yes. It shows up so many times in so many ways. And the more you can have a sense of humor with yourself and you can allow that witness observer, it becomes a lot less stressful and a lot more fun, because even if you make a wrong turn or a wrong choice, as soon as you make that choice and you make it and you stand there for another couple minutes feeling that choice, you can say, oh, wait, this wasn't the choice for me. But either 10 new choices just opened up to you because you made that choice, right? It's just like, and I think we can go on and on with metaphors, but with our GPS systems on our phones and our cars, right? We all know it has one route, but if you choose, I'm not going that way, I'm going to keep going down this road because I know it's quicker than what my phone is telling me to do. Well, it recalibrates.
Right.
And so do we.
Right.
So our choices, if you believe in the power of choice, you're moving in the direction of this greater freedom. And always new opportunities will recalibrate to keep you on course for your goal, whatever your desired vision is. It will recalibrate to get you there the best, quickest, most effective way possible.
Yeah, exactly.
And the contrast to that is when we feel really small and we don't, no matter what, we could see other people around us, things happening for them, things opening for them, things manifesting for them, somebody taking that holiday and having lost that 20 pounds. And when people witness people get what they want in their lives. And sometimes that for some people can be something that makes them want to constrict even further and just, affirm to themselves, it just never happens for me. But that has been a belief system then that was so mirrored to you and so ingrained in you, and some enough experiences in your life has taught you that is a belief system that you currently have. But it's not a belief system that you need to hold on to either. But it's a choice.
No. I have, as I keep hearing you talk about choice, I do have compassion for so many of us who were conditioned, and there's so many people who don't truly believe that they have choice. They believe that everything is being done to them, or there's no hope for them realizing any kind of dream because of that limited thinking and that incarcerated thinking, that sense of trappedness, that their environment has conditioned in them from such an early age. And I think I just really want to be the voice. I want us to be a voice for people, for people to understand the level of freedom in a way that understanding the choice gives you, if that makes sense. So
it's something you live from inside.
Yeah.
It's a perspective from inside you that absolutely creates how you see your life. And, this is a time of COVID, and this is a time of, all kinds of change happening in our world. And, people can see this experience through the lens of freedom and creating their life and feeling much more empowered when they're out and about, or when they're working from home, or whatever, that there's many people that might say, well, while this is going on and this is a real virus that the world has had to deal with, I'm going to make the best of the situation. I'm going to renovate my house. I'm going to clean out my garage. I've been trying for 20 years to clean out my attic.
Right.
And they just might do it this time because they feel empowered to do it, and they're going to make the choice to do that. And they're going to open themselves up to all the choice points that would support that desire. Or it can do the opposite, which is many people do have the conditioning, and they do feel like this just made their world much smaller, much more difficult, much more challenging, right? As if life wasn't hard enough. Now we have COVID, right? For many people.
Yeah.
And that just becomes an energy that we live and we embody, and we take it in from the inside out. And that's what comes up and out, and how we speak, how we respond to people, how we participate in our lives, and how we experience our lives. And it's no wonder how conditioning is so effective. Because if that's your viewpoint, is having to live small and obligated and tough times and challenges, that will continue to be what you speak and live and embody, which then gets the gears of the universe to give you more of those opportunities to feel that way.
Right.
And we've talked about that many times in other podcasts about ourselves as powerful creators. And this is an energetic universe. And freedom and confinement are energetic possibilities in the world, right?
In every choice.
In every single choice.
Right. And I really liked what we said about freedom is the language of possibility, or the language of possibility is part of freeing the self, and the language of limitation is part of the confinement, is part of the default map. So maybe what we want to do is to wrap up. I'd love to just read these 3 final questions.
Yeah.
I'm hoping people are finding this helpful. And I definitely recommend picking up the book and having these questions with you, and really, it really gets you thinking about every choice that you make, about how you speak, your choice of how you're going to speak to someone, about how you're going to treat someone, about just about everything. So let me read these just last 3 questions. Is this an act of self-love, or is it an act of self-sabotage? Is this an act of faith, or is it an act of fear?
That's a good one.
And am I choosing from my divinity, or am I choosing from my humanity? To me, am I choosing from my sort of divine self, my higher self, or am I choosing from my human self? It's
so interesting. I just did a podcast recently for Whole Soul Mastery, which I do some roundtables now with people. And there was a quote that came up where you were talking about faith and fear as one of the final questions that she's asking. And while I was preparing for that conversation, I saw somebody had posted 2 meanings for the acronym of fear. So FEAR. And one of them was forget everything and run, right? And the other one was face everything and rise.
Wow.
And that also really illustrates these energies of the Creator is like, oh yeah, I'm going to face everything and I'm going to rise through
and create
everything.
New.
Right? Exactly. And the forget everything and run is that fear that wants to just pull the covers up over our eyes, or let me just, live the way where I know everything is safe. It's not super exciting. And it's not that these things are wrong, but if anybody's listening to this and feels that confined experience, especially during COVID and this pandemic experience, there are other ways to perceive your situation, and then your experiences will line up to match the lens through which you're seeing your life.
Yes.
And we're here at Whole Soul School and Foundation to be voices of possibility and potentiality.
Absolutely.
And with your work in the prison system and our commitment to empower people and inspire people whose lives have literally been affected by incarceration and reentry, you know this well from the many years you worked giving these messages to people, teaching these. And I've lived it in my own life and the people that I've helped and served, and the people that we both know. And we've lived this ourselves. Everybody has, this is the same world. Now, we all have lenses through which we see the world, but we are all born on the Earth planet, and we are all given this potential for awareness and these tools of asking ourselves these questions. And sometimes it really helps. I love Debbie Ford, and she really gave us some amazing insights, and her movie, which we did a show on called The Shadow Effect, was very powerful. And Debbie Ford is just a good person to go to, at least her website now, and the works that she's left for us. She's left a map.
Exactly.
I mean, she's left a map to follow of what she had understood and come to live in her own life.
Yes.
And when you connect with teachers like this, their legacy lives on, and they're trying to inspire you to keep rising for freedom instead of succumbing to fear. And if living a life that you have well-worn pathways and those default patterns feel very safe and comfortable for you, that may be where you truly desire to be. If you can say my horizon line is right where I am, like this is exactly where I want to be, then you're a match to what you're saying your vision is. But if you want something more, something different, or you can feel that confinement, that constriction, this is an opportunity to tap into a teacher like Debbie Ford.
Well, actually, what I would say, Marie, is, one of the ways I open class is talking about the truth is many, many of us on the planet are suffering. They're in some way, they feel like they are suffering, and they are seeking tools and ways to free themselves from that suffering. To transmute that suffering into something beautiful and amazing, and
to feel empowered.
And to feel empowered.
People are struggling to find their power
Right.
again inside.
Yes.
And true power, not power that grabs energy from
Not
somebody
false
else.
power, right.
Not false power, the abuse of power, or misguided or distorted power.
Right.
But true power that comes from alignment and awareness inside. And that's what we're really here to empower and to inspire. And,
Yes.
and I think we're talking about people like Debbie Ford as an example of that she's given us some ideas and some questions we can be asking ourselves. And we like to be voices of awareness, tools of awareness, so that you have these choice points. And no matter who you are and where you live and what your circumstances are, every day, if you're breathing, there are choices crossing your path about how you want to show up in your life and how you want to express your gifts and your talents and who you are in the best and brightest version of you. And so we celebrate that in every person. And it's especially exciting for both of us when you see people getting curious about other ways of thinking and learning and growing. And even if people try this on what we talk about and say, it's not for me, still the getting curious is a huge skill in this life, and it's part of reclaiming our power.
Yes.
And so I like that. I'm going to go back to Flower Diamonds.
Yes, I was going to say.
Very beautiful poem, right?
I was feeling that, yes.
The power of choice, this fundamental knowing that at any moment you can be free. In any moment in our lives, we can be free just by the simple choice inside to say, I am willing to be free. I am willing to take the steps that will help me become more free. And I'm willing to embrace the freedom that I know is who I really am. And so I want to thank you, Lacy, for joining me.
Thank you, Marie.
And our listeners. And we will be back again, hopefully earlier in August rather than later. But we spend some time trying to get the pulse of the energies on the planet and what people are dealing with, what those themes might be coming up for people.
What would be most helpful, really?
What would be most helpful? And so we thank you for joining us, and please share about Whole Soul School and Foundation, our website. You can visit us there. It's wholesoulschoolandfoundation.org. We're active here on YouTube with our videos here, and so you can find us on YouTube. And you can also find us on social media, which is where we post these really beautiful poems by Flower Diamond, and also quotes from people throughout history who are giving us this inspirational map, this power of choice, and these breadcrumbs to follow on how to liberate ourselves from our default patterning so we can live our best and most authentic life.
Also, I think it's important to mention that we can be found on most podcast platforms now. We've worked really hard to make sure that we've gotten on some of these platforms, and I was able to actually listen to us through Spotify in my car the other day for the first time.
It's really nice. People can download them, right?
Yep.
The episodes that you want to particularly tune into.
Yep.
And so, yes, you can find us on most of your favorite podcast platforms, but Spotify and Apple iTunes and Google Play Music are among some of the more popular right now. So find us, join us, please donate to us, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, spread the word, and know that when you do donate, and we do have some amazing sustainer donors that we're so grateful for, it helps us to continue to bring these messages and to support people. We do have projects in the works to really support people whose lives have been impacted by incarceration and reentry, which is a whole other, journey of discovering the power of choice, right, in their lives again. But when you donate and support us, we can do more meaningful projects and good works in the world. So thank you to our sustainer donors. Thank you to people thinking about donating. And we send you blessings, and we'll see you next time in August for another Fireside Chats. Until then, have a great few weeks.